welcome everyone. Vice Chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Committee and former Chief Executive of the HKHTC. This is Eva Koralnik, Permanent Secretary for Education of the HKHTC. Chen, Chairman of the Hopkins, the Religious Society of Hong Kong, Your Excellencies, friends, communal and religious leaders, including Rabbi Asher and the Chief Imam of Shah. In 2005, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution whereby each year at the end of January there would be a global memorial day to honor the victims of the Holocaust. That would be the 6 million Jews who were murdered and the other victims that were killed too. In Hong Kong, each year since 2012, the Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Center has been hosting this commemoration. Tonight and throughout the year, our ongoing mission is to help people in Hong Kong and in Greater China understand the history of the Holocaust and why that matters today. We also want to combat hatred, racism, and intolerance, and bridge peoples of different backgrounds. We have the great thing in Hong Kong, we have people from many different backgrounds, and we want to help people just have more tolerance in this already very tolerant society. We think these are some of the keys to creating a better world. This year, our theme, and this has been going on since September, is Women in the Holocaust. For those of you who might remember, last year we did a program, or a series of programming on children in the Holocaust. You'll see tonight that women are featured in every aspect of the program. Many of the speakers, people making comments, are females. All 6 candlelighters tonight are female too. If people have time, and I hope you do on your way out, there's an exhibition in the entranceway, and that's also about women in the Holocaust. Tonight, we are particularly privileged and greatly honored to welcome Eva Koralnik into Hong Kong. She has a very moving and inspiring story that she will be sharing with us. The Council General Ying from Switzerland will be introducing her in a moment. What I do want to say is, in the last 10 days, while Eva has been here, she has visited 11 schools. She has presented her story and information about the Holocaust to over 3,000 people. There's 3,000 interfaces we have just in this period of time, and it's been a great visit. The culmination of that is tonight's ceremony. Eva's visit has only been made possible through the very generous support of the King Foundation. We have Ben Bach here tonight, and we're very grateful for your support. Ben is also going to be making remarks later and leading us in a moment of silence. We're also very thankful for support from Cathay Pacific. Tonight we have the CEO of Swire Asia Pacific, William Swire, with us. At this time, I would like to call on the Permanent Secretary for Education of Hong Kong, Mrs. Eva Koralnik, to the podium to make her remarks. Mrs. Eva?
Mr. Steinman, Mrs. Speiler, Ms. Koralnik, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity to join you all today at this solemn ceremony of the annual United Nations Holocaust Remembrance Day. The Holocaust took place during the Second World War, when more than 6 million Jews and other victims of Nazism were persecuted, tortured, enslaved, and murdered in concentration camps. Today, we gather here to remember the Holocaust, pay tribute to the deceased and the survivors, and promote Holocaust awareness to the public. To enable our young people to learn from events they could not witness firsthand, history education is of utmost importance. As educators, our mission is to equip our young people with an understanding of their human heritage and to connect the present with people, places, and times of the past. Through making inquiries into the past, students understand how decisions and acts of people in the past have impacted upon our present and continue to influence our common future. History education also provides a knowledge foundation for our young people to make informed decisions that shape the future world. To teach students about the Holocaust, we have included it in our history curriculum. Through looking into the causes of the Holocaust, understanding the lives of those held captive in concentration camps, learning about the execution of final solution, the Nuremberg trials after the war, and the post-war reconciliation efforts of the German government and society, students trace the origins of anti-Semitism and learn about the extreme measures taken against the Jews in Nazi Germany and the post-war efforts of the Germans and the international community in making reparations and restoring peace. Through helping students learn about the unbearable effects of human cruelty, discrimination, and extremism, which culminated in genocide, we hope students could learn about the value of forgiveness and the importance of safeguarding peace and human rights. In the Second World War, I'm sad to say, the victims were not confined to those in Europe. From December 1937, for 6 weeks, Chinese people in the then capital of Nanjing were massively killed during the Nanjing Massacre, and others were also killed in large numbers elsewhere in the country. As a tribute to the victims, the Central People's Government designated the 13th of December as the National Memorial Day for Nanjing Massacre victims. Every year on that day, our nation holds a national memorial ceremony to mourn the victims and make solemn pledges to maintain peace. On the same day, the Hong Kong SAR government also holds an official ceremony in commemoration of the victims who were killed in the Nanjing Massacre and during the Japanese invasion. We remember the unspeakable suffering of the Jewish, Chinese, and other peoples in the Second World War, and we strive to preserve and pass on their memories and experiences for students to learn about the horror of hate and wars. This year's commemoration theme is Being a Woman in the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, women were brutally persecuted due to the unique vulnerabilities and prejudices that came with being a woman in 20th century Europe. This theme asks us to remember women's suffering from feminist perspectives and honor the brave women of the Holocaust. Each woman's experience in the Holocaust is a testament to the Nazi atrocities and a caution for the future. Their stories speak not only of hunger, humiliation, death, and despair, but also of dignity, solidarity, hope, love, and an indomitable will to live. In Asia, women also suffered in indescribable ways in the war, including through sexual slavery. Their stories the world must never forget. Through revealing their sufferings and their triumphs, we hope the seeds of understanding, empathy, acceptance, inclusion, respect, and resilience will be sowed in the minds of our future generations. The lessons about the abuse inflicted on women during the war also highlighted the importance of gender equality. In Hong Kong, gender equality is well protected by law. Working in the Education Bureau, I'm committed to ensuring that all school-age children of different races, boys and girls alike, enjoy equal opportunities to receive education. Gender equality is also duly addressed in curriculum contents, pedagogies, and student and school activities. With increased education opportunities, women are developing their talents, playing major roles and making contributions in different fields. Each woman, whether in the role of a mother, teacher, sibling, daughter, or grandmother, is a unique repository of knowledge and experience, and that society as a whole flourishes when people, whether male or female, are allowed fair opportunities to share their insights and skills with others. Conversely, when women are deprived of opportunities to learn and participate in public life, the whole community suffers. We are committed to providing the women of the future with opportunities and with equal opportunities and a peaceful and safe environment in which they may learn and develop their potentials to the full. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share with you a famous saying: eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. While Hong Kong has fortunately been free from military confrontation since 1945, we shall never forget the sufferings and sacrifice made by innocent people throughout history. We must work together to teach these hard lessons and prevent acts of genocide from ever happening again. In closing, I would like to express my respect to all the victims and survivors of war and my gratitude to the Consul General, Mrs. Speiler, and co-chairman of the Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Center Board of Directors, Mr. Glenn Steinman, for inviting me to speak at this solemn ceremony. I know that our keynote speaker, Ms. Eva Koralnik, will share her story with us today and later with students in Hong Kong. On behalf of the Education Bureau and schools and Hong Kong students, my greatest gratitude to you, Mrs. Koralnik. Thank you all very much again.
Mother, and older brother and I were sent to Auschwitz in December of 1943. We were kept in a Czech family camp, which was a ploy by the Nazis to show the International Red Cross that Czech Jews were being well looked after. At the time, we had no idea what the family camp was even established, because most of the time, when children arrived at the Auschwitz railway station, they were almost immediately killed in the gas chambers. The International Red Cross never inspected Auschwitz, so the Nazis gassed and killed most of the September transport. This was in March and April of 1944. Then a few months later, they decided to make a selection from the second group, which my family and I were in. My brother John, who was 4 years older than me, was handicapped and he was chosen to die. And because I was less than 12 years old, I was also put on death row. We were both standing in the line when one of the prisoners I had been working for as a messenger came over and quickly moved me into a group of older children. He had saved my life. But when my mother found out that John, who was 16, was going to be gassed, she decided to stay with him. She could not bear the idea of him going into the gas chamber by himself. About 5 days after the selection, she wrote a letter to my father, who had been moved to a medical camp because he was a physician. She gave it to a guard, and despite the massive size and size of Auschwitz, he delivered it to my father. My mother, who was always a good judge of character, had picked the right person. A few months later, Auschwitz was liberated and I was reunited with my father. It was then he told me he had a letter from my mother written to him shortly before she and my brother were taken on trucks to the gas chambers. I was only 12 at the time, so it was too painful to read, and I pushed it to the back of my mind. I didn't see the note until after my father died in 1967, and I was sorting out his possessions. I had thought about it many times over the years, and I was curious, but I knew it would be too pressing and upsetting to read. I felt those 10 sentences, scribbled in pencil on paper, she had found in the camp were simply too closely linked to her death. And when I did eventually read it, I found it really disturbing because I was immediately in her situation. But I was also amazed about how positive and how calm she was in the letter. The letter dated 11th July 1944 reads,
"You, my only one, dearest, in isolation we are waiting for darkness. We considered the possibility of hiding, but decided not to do so, since we felt it would be hopeless. The famous trucks are already here, and we are waiting for it to begin. I am completely calm. You, my only and dearest one, do not blame yourself for what happened. It was our destiny. We did what we could. Stay healthy and remember my words, that time will heal, if not completely, then at least partially. Take care of the little golden boy, and don't spoil him too much with your love. Both of you, stay healthy, my dear ones. I will be thinking of you and Lisa. Have a fabulous life. We must board the trucks into eternity." Amen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure, especially an honor, to introduce to you tonight Eva Koralnik, who was born 1936 in Budapest. Her parents were the Hungarian Rita Rothenberg and the Swiss Berta Pastel. Berta's parents ran a textile business in St. Gallen, Switzerland, with branch in Budapest. During a stay there, Berta met with her future husband, and they got married in 1945. According to the Swiss legislation at the time, Berta lost her Swiss citizenship and became Hungarian. The family lived in Budapest. When the German troops occupied Hungary, Eva's father was assigned to forced labor and separated from his family. They would meet with them only in December 1945 again. In summer 1944, Eva Koralnik's mother tried to reactivate her citizenship at the Swiss embassy in Budapest in order to obtain a minimal chance for a return, without success. The naturalization legislation in Switzerland was only changed in 1952. However, with the help of the Swiss diplomat Dr. Rolf Feller, she escaped with her two daughters to Switzerland in October 1944. Eva Koralnik will focus on this escape in just a minute. Apart from Rolf Feller, I would also like to mention another Swiss diplomat in Budapest during the war, Karl Lutz. He saved the lives of 62,000 Jews. But it has to be mentioned that both diplomats paid a rather high price when they returned to Switzerland after the war, as the Swiss authorities did not back their actions during the war. Karl Lutz, as an example, was only rehabilitated in 1995, 20 years after he passed away. In Switzerland, the family lived in simple circumstances, supported by relatives and the Jewish refugee at St. Gallen. Willy Rothenberg became an independent textile merchant, and together with his wife, he built up a successful wholesale and retail business, and in 1960, he was granted Swiss citizenship. Eva's younger sister Vera studied law and became a federal judge at the highest court in Switzerland until her retirement in 2012. Eva attended the School of Interpreting at the University of Geneva, and after receiving her translation diploma, she moved to Israel. She was commissioned by the Yoganis Publishing House in Zurich to publish stories by the best Israeli authors in anthology, which she also translated from Hebrew. The preface was written by the Nobel Prize winner Heinrich Böll.
This brought Eva into contact with the internationally active literary agent Ying in Zurich. She joined the agency and grew into a profession that eventually became her life. The Lippmann Agency represents a long list of international authors, including important estates such as Anne Frank, Elias Canetti, Erich Fromm, and many more. Eva Koralnik also translated from French, English, Hebrew, and Hungarian. Her professional contacts have resulted in lifelong friendships with authors and publishers all over the world. She has been married to film director Eva Koralnik, also present tonight since 1970. They have a daughter and a son, both married and parents of 2 boys each.
To stand here and tell you my story as a Holocaust survivor. I must confess, however, that I consider the generation of my parents to be the real survivors. They lived the war years in full awareness and fear of the tragedy we faced, and it was they who had to take decisions which meant life or death. I was just a young child who saw it, lived it, and was lucky to survive. My parents' generation is no longer here, and it is now up to us to witness, to remember, and to report. Soon the last of us will also be gone, and the world will have to rely on written documents, photographs, and films in order to know about the Holocaust of the Jews and the 6 million who were murdered. The Holocaust is unique in history as a master plan to destroy an entire group of people. It was perpetrated by Germany, one of Europe's most civilized countries. Anti-Semitism is a very old phenomenon. Throughout history, Jews have often been scapegoats for problems in the countries where they lived for generations. For instance, Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492 and subject to the pogroms in late 19th century Russia. However, never before was there a master plan to exterminate all Jews. The Nazis named it the final solution. They executed it using the most modern technology of the time and nearly succeeded, as over 60% of Europe's Jews were killed. In addition to the Jews, the Nazis also targeted and murdered other groups who they considered not worthy of living. With the slogan that Europe should be Judenrein, meaning cleansed of Jews, the possibility for escape or resistance was extremely limited. The Nuremberg laws passed by the Nazi government in 1935 defined who was a Jew, and this even included baptized Christians with Jewish ancestry. And now to my own story. As the Consul General said, I was born in November 1936 in Budapest. My father, Willy Rottenberg, was a Hungarian Jew. My mother, Berta Paswick, was Swiss of Polish Jewish origin. Her parents owned a textile business in the Swiss city of St. Gallen, which was world famous for its embroidery. My grandparents opened a branch of their business in Budapest, where they also lived temporarily. My mother, as a young woman, used to accompany them there. She loved the lively city, which in the 30s was called Little Paris, with its metro and main boulevard that resembled the Champs-Élysées. 50 Gifted in languages, my mother quickly learned Hungarian and worked as a private teacher in the home of a family of bankers who treated her like their own daughter. It is there that she met my father, an accountant in his family's textile business. They married in April 1935. Because of this marriage, Berta had to give up her citizenship, her Swiss citizenship, since any woman marrying a foreigner had to surrender her Swiss passport. By contrast, any foreign lady marrying a Swiss man immediately received a Swiss passport. This discriminatory law almost cost us our lives, as my mother was now a Hungarian citizen. My parents, Berta and Willy, lived the unspectacular but pleasant life of a Jewish middle-class couple in Budapest, surrounded by my father's large family and many friends. We spent our yearly holidays with my mother's family in Switzerland up to the summer of 1939, 2 weeks before the outbreak of World War II. My father ignored all the warnings, and although the Swiss family begged him to stay, he did not want to leave his parents or work in Hungary. He argued that nothing would happen to him as a decent Hungarian citizen. He, like so many others, could not imagine what his beloved home country had in store for him and for hundreds of thousands of other Jews. Out of 600,000 Hungarian Jews, over 400,000 were killed within a short time. On March 19, 1944, my father came home from work earlier than usual and said the fateful words, "They are here." I felt their heavy meaning. German troops occupied Hungary that day, and from then on, our lives changed forever. Up to then, I had a pleasant childhood. I was spoiled by my grandparents, uncles and aunts. I played with my friends in the park on the elegant Danube riverbank. In winter, we went skating, in summer hiking and swimming. As a first grader, I loved reading and envied other children who had siblings as playmates, while I was an only child. Sometimes I was a bit ashamed that my mother spoke Hungarian with a foreign accent, but this was probably my only major childhood problem. At home, I loved listening to the Swiss songs she played me on the piano. With the arrival of the Germans and under the supervision of Adolf Eichmann, 107 severe laws were implemented, stripping Hungarian Jews of all their rights. Eichmann was responsible for the final solution, for the so-called Endlösung. His aim was to speed up the deportation of all Hungarian Jews to the death camps of Auschwitz. 17 years later, I worked as a translator at the historic Eichmann trial in 1961. Only then could I understand the scope of the atrocities when listening to survivor testimonies. As a first step, all Jews, including children such as me, had to wear the yellow star to differentiate us from all other Hungarians. Most Jews had already lost their jobs, and our school was closed. We were only permitted to leave our homes for 3 hours each day. It was forbidden to go to public parks, sit on benches, or use public transport, except in the last carriage of a tram. These were just a few of the restrictions. This was everyday life. Budapest's large Jewish population was transferred into the small area of the city center, where houses with Jewish residents were marked with large yellow stars on black backgrounds. This was to facilitate their deportation. 70,000 people were given just 24 hours to leave their homes, deprived of their property and rights. The building where we lived, opposite the Opera House, became such a start house. Strangers came to live, or more accurately, camp in our apartment. One family opened the grand piano in our living room and cut off all the strings inside to use the space as a bed for their babies and small children. At that time, my mother was in her 4th month of pregnancy, and my father was sent by the Nazis to a labor camp where his unit repaired railway tracks destroyed by the Allies. This was the main route for the daily transport, in which people were crammed together in freight or cattle wagons en route to Auschwitz. My father told us after the war that some desperate mothers tried to hand out their babies to the Jewish railroad workers. He and his companions feared that their own families might be in one of these many transports. Life was fear and chaos. We slept in our clothes so that when air raids sirens woke us at night, we were ready to rush down to the air raid shelter in a damp cellar. I was terrified by the exploding bombs and anti-aircraft guns. By day, we feared the noise of each lorry. If one stopped, uniformed Nazis would force people onto it and take them away. One would never hear of them again. The Jewish population was in panic. We had no escape. Some people tried to procure false papers or find a hiding place with non-Jewish friends. Families were split up and food was scarce. To leave the house was dangerous, as the Nazis could arrest you without any reason. One evening, one of my school friends stood on our doorstep crying. She said that uniformed men had entered her home, destroyed the furniture, taken away her parents and older brother, and left her alone. I don't know what has become of her. One day, a non-Jewish neighbor approached my parents, suggesting a deal. He would take me in so that at least I would be saved. Should my parents survive, he would return me to them. If not, he would look after me like his own child. My parents thanked him but declined. Their fate would also be mine. Today, as an adult with children and grandchildren of my own, I understand how hard this decision must have been. Some families decided to give their children to Christian neighbors or friends willing to take them. This too was a great risk, as any person who tried to help Jews was heavily punished, if not killed. We also heard of whole families who took poison to avoid deportation. While we applied for entry visas at the Swiss consulate in Budapest, my mother's family in Switzerland also made every effort to get us out of Hungary. Hundreds of desperate people queued at the consulate day and night as word got around that Consul Lutz gave out so-called Schutzpässe, a safety pass to protect people. The famous Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg was doing the same at the Swedish embassy. At the Swiss consulate, a young diplomat, Dr. Harald Feller, was in charge of our file. Thanks to his skillful negotiations with a high-ranking German official, we obtained a transit visa to Switzerland through Nazi-occupied Austria. Feller, who in secret was also hiding Jews in his residence, was responsible for former Swiss citizens, including my mother and 2 other ladies who had the same fate, marrying Hungarian Jews. Life in Budapest became increasingly perilous with the Russian army approaching and the daily mass deportations to Auschwitz. Feller found a hiding place for us, so we could leave immediately if and when he obtained our transit papers. He feared that we might be deported or arrested in the meantime. It was a hot August day in 1944 when we left our home for good. I recall my mother removing the yellow star from my dress, which she ironed carefully so that no trace was left. She explained that I was not allowed to say that we were Jewish and that I must declare that my father was a soldier fighting on the front. I liked this sentence. I thought it was important, and I still know it in Hungarian. I also remember our last meal at home that day with my wonderful grandfather crying while he carried down our suitcases. My mother and I, with 2 formerly Swiss women we had never met before, but who of course became our friends, we moved into the hiding place that Feller arranged for us opposite the National Museum. One night, when we were sitting in the air raid shelter there, the building started to shake like in an earthquake. The museum had been bombed. A frightened lady asked me to pray with her to the Virgin Mary, while my mother, just as frightened, feared my ignorance of Catholic prayers would endanger us. Back in our room, I watched the high flames of the collapsing museum. My mother expected her baby any day. She was in panic that Feller might show up with our documents just when she was giving birth. As we had nothing prepared for the baby, my mother and I went out for the first time in many weeks, for the first time without a yellow star, to buy a few clothes. Walking the streets like a normal citizen was a matter of life and death for us. On August 15, my sister Vera was born in a Budapest hospital. My mother called a doctor who she found in the phone book. She was in agony, having to leave me behind. After giving birth, she was carried down to the hospital's air raid shelter with her newborn baby. During a heavy bombing attack, a brick fell on the little cot, but the baby was unharmed. Surviving was often due to small miracles. 6 long weeks passed under these circumstances, cut off from the outer world. I was endlessly bored with no friends to play with and just one book of fairy tales which I was reading over and over. Finally, on October 2, Feller brought us the long-awaited papers and the tickets to Switzerland. He personally accompanied us to the train station, handing us a cake for the long voyage. I still see him before my eyes making this kind gesture. He made it clear that our fate in Austria was out of his hands. He also said that the Swiss consulate employee was on the same train, but we were not supposed to talk to him. For me, this train ride ironically felt like a great adventure. I was unaware of the grave danger we faced. The windows were painted black and the light bulbs were dark blue as protection from the air raids. The steam locomotive stopped from time to time in the middle of nowhere or changed direction. Passengers were mostly German soldiers, and I was not allowed to talk to them, as I could have betrayed us by one wrong word. My mother was in tears when the train stopped at the Hungarian town where my father was interned. He did not know we were on our way to Switzerland, nor that he had become the father of a new baby girl. We arrived late at night in Vienna, missing the connection to Switzerland. The next train was to leave early next morning. Two Gestapo officers suddenly appeared, accompanied by two men in civilian clothes. They ordered us to get into their black Mercedes to take us to the Hotel Metropole, which was, in fact, the Gestapo headquarters in Vienna. My mother thanked the man politely in a trembling voice and insisted that we preferred to sleep at the station. But the Gestapo officer argued, "My ladies, we are in wartime, and ladies with little children need our protection. You will come with us." Suddenly, one of the men in civilian clothes interrupted the conversation and said in Swiss German, "Stop making a fuss and just get into the car." We immediately understood that this was a Swiss diplomat traveling on the same train, and this too was arranged by Feller to help us. I remember that night as if it was yesterday, the car ride through dark Vienna, the arrival in the brightly lit Gestapo headquarters. SS officers with shining leather boots holding German shepherd dogs on leashes. A red flag with a black swastika was behind the reception desk. We were asked to leave our suitcases in the lobby and were ushered to an elegant suite. Chambermaids brought us milk for the baby and snacks for us. We received royal treatment, and I could not understand why my mother, pale with fear and exhaustion, paced back and forth all night. Today it is hard to believe that the Jewish woman and her children spent the night unharmed at the Gestapo headquarters, while in the same building, at the same time, prisoners were held and tortured. In the morning, we were taken to the train station, but our luggage had vanished. The next train took us further west, and we hoped we might finally reach Switzerland. But again the train stopped in a small Austrian town, a few miles from the Swiss border. Here too, so close to the promised land, we could have been caught and sent to the death camps. Our little group must have looked so pitiful and miserable that the station master brought us tea and let us sleep on long wooden tables. It is hard to describe the feeling of relief and gratitude when we finally crossed the border to the safe haven of Switzerland. Our papers were in order and no questions were asked. Again, a kind person, this time a Swiss railway clerk, gave my mother 2 francs to call my grandmother, who for months had no news from us. She could not believe that we were alive and in Switzerland. She had, of course, heard of the deportations and killings in Hungary and almost given up hope of ever seeing us again. In January of 1946, we learned that my father finally arrived at the Swiss border, but he was refused entry on the grounds that too many refugees had already been accepted by the country. His father, my beloved grandfather, died of starvation in the Jewish ghetto of Budapest, as had thousands of Jews. My Aunt Charlie was taken on the death march towards Vienna. People had to walk in the cold for miles until they collapsed and were shot. After a few weeks, my father was allowed to enter Switzerland for humanitarian reasons, on condition he leave the country with us within 3 weeks. It was irrelevant to the immigration authorities that my mother had been a Swiss citizen before her marriage, or that her brothers were serving in the Swiss army. We got legal help and finally obtained residency, but my father was refused a working permit, so my mother had to go to work. After several years, he finally was allowed to establish a business. We slowly integrated into society and in 1960 became Swiss citizens. I can now look back at a full professional life as a literary agent. My younger sister, Vera, became a Swiss Supreme Court judge. I am married to the filmmaker Eva Koralnik, and we have a daughter, a son, and 4 grandchildren. And what happened to our rescuer, Dr. Harald Feller? He had been one of the youngest Swiss diplomats in Budapest when the Red Army entered. On February 12, 1945, Feller and another Swiss diplomat were taken to Moscow as hostages. They were initially declared missing by Switzerland, by the Swiss government, and a mass was held for them in the cathedral of the capital, Bern. However, a year later, both diplomats were returned in exchange for 2 Soviet prisoners. It took me almost a lifetime, until 1992, long after my parents had passed away, to confront my childhood and look for the man who saved us. One day, I was hit by an urge to know more. I tried to locate Feller, found his address, and wrote him a short letter asking if we could meet. I wanted to hear our story as told by him. He immediately responded and said he kept my mother's cable from 1944, confirming that we had arrived safely in Switzerland. We subsequently had many extraordinary encounters. This elegant, elderly gentleman stated early after his return to civil life was a well-known figure in Bern. He used to visit prisons and stage plays with the prisoners, and he was himself an actor. We saw him on scene. We became friends, alas, very late in his life, and I'm grateful that he told us our story from his perspective with the many details that are so precious to us. My sister and I arranged for Feller to be declared righteous among the nations at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. This is a special honorific used by the State of Israel to recognize non-Jews who risked their lives during the Holocaust to save Jews from extermination by the Nazis. On September 6, 1999, Dr. Harald Feller received the medal at a ceremony in Bern and said, I quote, I accept it on behalf of all those men and women who selflessly helped refugees and whose names will never be known. Harald Feller died in 2003 at the age of 90. The annual UN Holocaust Memorial Day honors the memory of the 6 million Jews and other victims of the Holocaust. This number is so often repeated that I fear it can sometimes lose its meaning. There were 6 million human beings like all of us here in this room. I am privileged to share my experiences with you tonight here in Hong Kong, thanks to Harald Feller, a non-Jewish man who saved our lives, and thanks to the bravery and fortitude of my mother and the miracle of luck. Thank you.
Around the world and in Hong Kong, each year during the UN Holocaust Memorial commemoration, 6 candles are lit in memory of the 6 million Jews who were senselessly and brutally killed in the Holocaust. Among them, 2 million were women who perished. May the memory of these innocent victims be forever preserved. In World War II, ideologically, the Nazi regime did not discriminate according to gender in the persecution of Jews. But women were particularly vulnerable to beating, rape, and outrage experiments. By removing women's hair, head and body, and dressing them with the same striped cloth as the men, the Nazis deprived them their womanhood. The Nazi and their collaborators spared neither women, men, nor children in conducting mass murder operations. Yet, amidst all this violent terror, women found strength and mental fortitude to continue loving, caring, and nurturing their children, families, and friends. Out of this horrific situation came out the most heroic occurrences and the most terrible sacrifices that no human, man, woman, or child should ever confront ever again. I'm standing here today as an Israeli, a Jewish woman, a mother of twins, a career woman, and the Consul General of Israel. Because of this strong woman who lived the Holocaust and overcame. Thank you, Eva. One of these brave women was also my grandmother, Rita Machlin, a survivor of Auschwitz extermination camp. I'm here today and always to cherish her and the memories of those brave women. Tonight, the 6 candles will be lit in honor of the women in the Holocaust. We will now commence the lightings.
I want to know every kind of wisdom that exists in the world, but you're at war. All the beautiful treasures of science, everything that wisdom has created, will be lost. I want the world, but the world is making itself lost to me. Lovely hopes and dreams will be shattered when they run into their own barrier, a wall. The whole world has been closed to me.
Dearest, Friday, I am in the trade. My Richard, I don't know what's with him. He is still with me. Goodness, save my child, my innocent baby. How he must be crying. My suffering is now. Save my Richard, my dog. I cannot write. My heart, my Richard, my soul. Far away, nobody protects my 2-year-old child. To die quickly, oh my child, give me my Richard, my soul. Postcard addressed to Esther Frankel's family in Paris, thrown by Esther from the deportation train the 7th of August, 1942, which occurred in Auschwitz, 1 week later.
As she crossed the yard one day, passing a buyer of belongings of Jews who had been sent to the crematorium, her eyes fell upon a small prayer book that contained the afternoon service. And of all the treasures that one could find there, she snatched it and ran away quickly. The prayer book was used so intensively that it fell apart. On its inside cover, a treasure, clearer than gold, was discovered. A red substance that was put to use straight away to bring some color to her pale cheeks in the morning before the roll call. Thus, she looked healthy and able-bodied.
After all, everything passes in life and doesn't come back. Only the memories remain. In the end, a person forgets and is also forgotten. If I become a little grey person, no one will remember little Ruchka Diblich. They will remember that a 13-year-old girl, a headstrong girl, once lived. Now I am a person full of life, and what will ever remain of me? Only the dust of the earth. Has it been decreed that I and other thousands and millions of young people trusting people who are innocent of all crime are to be obliterated from among the living.
To my good fortune, we came together and formed a group, 4 girls. Our companionship was precious to all of us, and I would not overstate the case if I would say that it may have saved our lives. We didn't move from each other, and the sense of togetherness did us a great deal of good. The very fact of our being together gave us confidence. In a group of 4, we did not experience fear. Even our sadness and nostalgia over what we would lost were set aside for the time being.
As agile as acrobats, they fired handguns with both hands. Dangerous in face-to-face combat, she seemed as frightened as a rabbit, totally dismayed, and suddenly, as a group of our men approached her, she reached into her skirt or breeches, withdrew a concealed grenade, and hurled it at the men, vigorously cursing them to the very last generation.
I was honored to be able to invite you to contribute to the Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Center in its hosting of the annual United Nations Holocaust Memorial Day ceremony here in Hong Kong. The Holocaust is a subject I learned from books as a young boy. It made a very deep impression on me. When I was first traveled to Jerusalem, I saw the eternal flame burning of the Ying Holocaust Memorial. My immediate response was a disdain burns in every Jewish person's heart. As they say, the star shines brighter in the darkest night. And tonight, we remember and honor 6 million of them. And also heard many great people who fought the evil perpetrators. And some Jews who acted heroically to save the Jews, such as Dr. Halifax, and save the remarkable speaker tonight, Eva. And among these righteous people, I'm very proud to say that our compatriot, Ambassador Ho Shang, and the Jewish people's most desperate army, China and the people opened the doors and arms to the Jewish immigrants to come to China, while many nations rejected them. I have had a great honor to listen to the speakers tonight, and also last year's speaker, Graham Reich, and I also watched many of the videos of survivors and their books by Eli Wiesel. And each of these great souls have an indomitable spirit, and one thing they all have common is that they emphatically tell us that we must not forget or be indifferent to the Holocaust. From the hearts and in the words, they let us know, if we don't learn and if we don't forget these horrors, then this can happen to anyone again today. The Hong Kong community hears the answer to the calling tonight, led by such key figures as our Vice Chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, and former Chief Executive Mr. Tan Chi Hua, and our Honorable Wen Chen and Barbara Chen, and Mei Kai, and also Chief Imam, and our Permanent Secretary of Education in Yang, and John Lee, and also for dignitaries who also coming to introduce earlier, and also every one of you tonight and here. We are all here to listen to and spread the important message we're hearing. I want to again thank
HKHTC for its work to educate about the Holocaust and promote the tolerance in Hong Kong. And this includes inviting Mr. James to make most meaningful reports. May I now ask everyone to stand up so we can reflect together on the silence. Sure. Thank you.
ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלם שמד תשע בריחו לילה מכל גרסתה בירתה משפחתה נחמתה ועמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן ויהי שלמה רבה משמיה חיים ושבע וישועה ונחמה וצלפה ורפואה וגאולה סליחה וכפרה ורווח והצלה לנו ולכל עמו ישראל אמרו אמן. עושה שלום בתרומה וברחמה ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל אמרו אמן.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for gracing us, for gracing this event with your presence. I also want to be able to say thank you again to many people here. Thank you again, Dong-san, Ronnie Chan, for gracing us tonight. Also want to thank everyone who has participated tonight. This is Linda Young and all the participants that made tonight so very meaningful. And King Home Foundation, Northern Swire Pacific, Catholic Pacific, we thank you so much. Also want to say thank you to our really great Hong Kong Holocaust and Tolerance Center team. Every year we work throughout the year to try to educate about the Holocaust, and once a year many of the people that are here get together, but I want you to know that we're out there. We're out there in the schools. We're in about 70 schools right now, just in Hong Kong. We're also in Taiwan. We're in mainland China. We're in Macau. And Mrs. Young, I can tell you that in addition to teaching about the Shoah, about the Holocaust, we also teach about the Nanjing Massacre. We work with Ronnie Chan's organization, the Asian Society, to teach about both the Holocaust and the Nanjing Massacre and other atrocities that have occurred. On this particular night, of course, this is the night to commemorate the Shoah, the Holocaust, and most of all, I want to thank Eva Koralnik. We are so privileged to have you in Hong Kong these 10 days. As I said earlier, if people didn't hear me, I'm sorry that was my issue. I can tell you that in the last 10 days, over 3,000 people have heard your message. Eva, it's been a tremendous visit, and we've all been touched by your elegance and your poise and your intelligence. You survived what some people call the worst atrocity in human history, right? And in doing so, we are grateful that one person, Dr. Harold Feller, actually could make such a difference, even and especially at the darkest moment. Ben, you spoke about how at the darkest moment there might be a shining light. And I think what Dr. Feller did is a lesson to all of us. I mean, just one person can make such a difference. And if there's anything that we try to do with our center, is we try to tell every individual that that's possible. And Eva, you're a living example of what one person has done. For everyone that's here, if you're moved by what we do, you want to get involved with us in any way, we have so much more to do. We've actually just started. We're 6 years old with our organization. Any support you can provide in any form would also make a big difference. So in closing, I just want to thank everybody again for coming tonight and for your support of our work. Thank you.